Very glad to have all of you here, and I, at this time, will call us to order and read the ethics statement. In accordance with General Statute 138A-35 and other provisions of State Government Ethics Act, it is the duty of every member of the task force to avoid both conflicts of interest and appearances of conflict. Does any member have a known conflict of interest or appearance of a conflict with respect to any matters coming before the task force today? Seeing none. All right, moving forward, I have welcomed y'all, and I'm also here with my co-chair, Ms. Scott. Obviously glad to see her today. And then Secretary Smythe, would you like to give any words of welcome?
Just good morning, everybody. It's my pleasure to be here with you. I appreciate the work that you're doing in this space. It's very important to the state of North Carolina, so thank you so much.
And I also want to recognize today, we've got Representative John Bell with us. Thank you for being with us today. And he is here with our first set of speakers, the Toon family. And so many of you may have heard their story, but we received a reach out from Representative Bell's office to talk about gang violence and gun violence and the work that we are doing here in the task force. And we thought that as he works on legislation, as partners collaborate in that work, as we work on what our recommendations for legislation might be, that it would be really impactful and important to hear from families of folks who have been affected by this type of violence and of this type of crime. And so we have here today with us Whitney Brown Toon, who and her mom Ruby. Yes, good morning, y'all. And they are mother and grandmother to Jalea Lily Toon, who was 13-year-old in Goldsboro, whose life was tragically taken by gun violence on December 21st of 2025. Since then, the Toon family have been advocates against gun violence and have been really active in this space. And I know that it's a hard thing for you all to be here today, but we are grateful for you and for the work that you are doing and for the impact that we know you will have on our work and the broader work. So I will now stop talking and welcome you guys up to speak. We have a microphone if you'd like to come and stand wherever you're comfortable, or I'm happy to let you come sit here if you would like to do that.
Good morning. This is Lily. This is my 13-year-old baby that I miss dearly every day. I'm here. Good morning, and thank you for allowing me to have the opportunity to speak today. My name is Whitney Brown Toon, and I am the mother of Jalea Lily Toon. On October the 21st, 2025, December the 21st, 2025, my daughter was shot and killed in Goldsboro, North Carolina. She was only 13 years old. She had her whole life ahead of her. She was loved, she mattered, and my family had been trying to survive the pain no parent should ever have to carry. I am here today, not as a grieving mother, but I am here asking for change. Gun violence and gun retaliation, intimidation are destroying families before anyone steps in. Too many warning signs are being ignored. Too many young people are getting access to guns. Too many threats are being made in person, online, before something deadly happens. And the time families like mine are standing here speaking, it's already too late. I believe prevention has to start before the funeral, before the shooting, before the child is gone. When young people are posting guns, threats, others, gatherings in groups, and creating fear in the neighborhoods, this should be treated as serious. Families should not have to beg for help after danger is already visible. Communities need law enforcement, schools, parents, courts, local leaders working together before violence happens. I am asking for the task force to look closely at a stronger prevention and intervention laws, especially around minors having access to firearms, threats made online and in our community, and adults who know about dangerous behavior but fail to act. I am asking for more resources in place like Goldsboro. We need youth intervention programs, crisis response, safe places, mentorships, accountability, and real follow-up throughout. Our children need opportunity before the streets get them, and families need to know that we report danger. And families need to know that when we report danger, somebody is listening. My daughter Lily should still be here. I cannot bring her back, but I can stand here and say her name. I can fight so I can fight so another mother doesn't have to sit where I sit, cry how I cry, or bury a child because the warning signs were missed. Please remember her name, Jalea Lily Toon. Let her story be more than just a tragedy. Let it be a reason that North Carolina to act before another child is taken. Thank you for listening to me.
I just want to say thank you for having us here today. And the purpose of us being here, as my daughter stated, we're trying to save other children. No one should have to go through this. And we appreciate y'all for listening. And we do hope that we will have a positive outcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much to the Toon family for being here. And certainly y'all are welcome to stay as long as you want to. The work that the task force does is divided into 3 subgroups, and we're going to hear from our committees today about the work and the progress they're making. And we're also going to hear from some special speakers. So would love for y'all to stay if you'd like to. Thank you.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. So we're going to go ahead and move into those work group updates, starting with our prevention work group and our chair, Kevin Blackburn. So I'll welcome you up to let us know how things have been going with your work group.
Morning, everyone. I don't have slides, so that's one less thing. I really appreciate you all sharing your story for Lily, and obviously, so I'm leading the prevention group, and it's really important to me in this work and the work I do in Wilmington, work for Kids Making It, and we see families suffer all the time, and it's far overdue that we do something about it. So I'll highlight some of the progress we've made. So again, I'm Kevin Blackburn, leading the prevention working group. We've had a lot of good recommendations developed. The way we're approaching it is looking at each domain. So we're breaking it out into the 5 domains: individual, peer, family, school, and community. One of the first things we had a discussion about was what age range to focus on. Obviously, there's a gray area between prevention and intervention. It doesn't really sound like narrowed it down, but prenatal to age 12 was our age range. Large age range, but we think it's important, at least gives us some focus. One of the, I guess, most counterintuitive but most important things to consider is that really age 0 to 5 is absolutely critical in terms of social and cognitive development, support or lack thereof. And again, it's counterintuitive, but that is going to have the greatest benefit to the community, to families, and for what it's worth, it's also the highest ROI in terms of investing for support. We looked at primary protective factors that include workforce development, trauma-informed approaches, pro-social adult mentorship, and social emotional learning and self-regulation. We've talked a lot about the research that's out there. Unfortunately, there's limited gang prevention research out there, limited data, but we do know that youth violence prevention has a lot of similar strategies that are also effective for gang prevention. So we've kind of leaned into that as much as we can. One of the strongest predictors of gang involvement is peer influence. But as the prevention committee, one of the things we're looking at is, okay, but what leads to that, those poor peer choices? And a lot of it is how well a family is functioning. So families need support. That's going to have a lot of benefits throughout the community. Another thing we thought was interesting to note and important for us as we develop our recommendations. So of schools that report gang involvement, there was one study that showed schools that had 15% or more of their students that reported gang involvement, only 20% of those principals thought there was a gang problem in their school. So that's critical. Mike's going in now a little bit, but it's very important that we don't rely on schools to self-report. Nothing against the schools, but in many cases, in this case, it was 80% of schools, the principals had no idea there were gangs, significant gangs, gang activity in their schools. So we don't want to be over reliant. We've had one expert speaker so far. We're working on several others. We had John Wolf, who's the associate director at University of Chicago's Education Lab. He came in and explained, or came into our Zoom call and explained the ECHO program. ECHO stands for Every Choice Has Opportunity. So their focus is they've developed this curriculum based out of Chicago, very new, just released to the public in February. And essentially, they're looking at how can we help kids make better decisions in high stakes situations. I think we all know, a kid with a gun can make a very impulsive, terrible decision, and the ramifications last for a lifetime. If we can help them make a better decision, just that one moment can change everything. They've had a lot of success so far, 45 to 50% reduction in gun violence. What we really like, our group likes, is that it's completely adaptable. So if you want to have in a school environment or a classroom, you want to have sequential cumulative 30-minute workshops, you can do that. Or if you just want to have a 5-minute intervention on this, talking to a kid on the street, you can do that as well. And most notably, it's free. So we learned a lot from him. I think that there are definitely going to be some recommendations relating to that program. And we're working on getting someone into our group for one of our next meetings that's going to be focused on trauma and its impacts on development. I think sure, yeah.
So with respect to the ECHO program, was there any talk or discussion, or did they have any idea about it being able to be replicated in different types of communities, right? Like urban versus rural, and impacts or effects, and how well it worked?
They are pretty confident that it'll work in a lot of different environments. Their focus was primarily Southside Chicago, more urban, but at the same time, what they do is rooted in cognitive behavioral intervention. So I'm not an expert by any means, but I think there's fairly universal applicability. But I have John as a contact now, so I can ask him, because I know the work we do, as much as gangs are often associated with urban environments, we know that there are rural gangs and other challenges too. So yeah, I'll ask about that. It's a good question. One of the things I wanted to mention, I know it's hard to get funding for anything these days, but the cost to society and to the victims of gang-related crimes for one person, one high-rate offender, is estimated between $4.2 and $7.2 million over the course of their lifetime. So the way I look at it, we can pay some now in prevention, or we can pay a whole lot later, but we're going to pay either way. So that's one of the things we're going to be advocating strongly for in what we develop for our recommendations. On that note, I'm not going to bore you guys with all the specifics, but just a couple examples of some of the recommendations. We've been focused on individuals right now, that domain. We're going to be shifting into peers. One is supporting parents during pediatric visits, so age 0 to 5. From what I understand, after age 5, and particularly after age 10, there's a significant drop in pediatric care and regular visits. So families, and the kids are just basically coming in if there's an illness or a crisis, and the prevention opportunity really drops off. So we've been discussing how we can provide education and connection for those parents, support them at the very beginning, and then just as all the lack of support can kind of manifest over the years, the positive support can have that preventative effect. We've also talked a lot, seems to be a lot of consensus in our group, about school-based resources. We know there are logistical challenges to that, but group mentorship, mental health, trying to really tie the community resources to the school, because we know that that's going to be one of the best and easiest ways to connect with the kids. And then lastly, we talked about a model called the Omaha 360 model. Some of you may have heard of it. It's basically split into 30, 30, 30. I'm not really sure where the 360 comes from, but 30% enforcement, 30% intervention, and 30% prevention. So it's a very holistic approach, system-based. It has led to 70% reduction in gun violence in the Omaha area. So on the one hand, you're building trust. It's community and school-based. You're building trust with law enforcement. You're also providing wraparound services, support for affordable housing, and also connecting youth and their families to workforce development pathways. So that's one of the models we're looking at in addition to ECHO. And then specifically for our next 6 months, like I said, we're looking at each of these domains. We've decided to group them by theme. Each of our working group members are developing the recommendations independently, which I think is great. It means we're least likely to be influenced by the rest of the team. We can kind of provide our own truly independent perspective. but then we're coming together, we're seeing overlap. So the staff and I are going to be working on creating themes. For example, which of our recommendations relate to pediatric care? That could be one theme, for example. And then we're going to be continuing to look at evidence. We want to make sure whatever we're recommending is backed by evidence, is in some way proven. That'll be June 9th through September 8th as we have our meetings. Our October 13th and November 10th meetings, we're going to be reviewing all our recommendations, assessing. We want to make sure we've got implementation, feasibility, evaluation methods, and then we'll finalize everything, have it to you all and to the task force by the November 24th meeting. There's lots more we covered, but I'll stop there. And if anyone has any questions, let me know. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thanks.
thanks, Kevin.
Any questions for Kevin? Yep. All right, we're gonna turn to Michelle with our interventions.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So you know you're on the right track when you have a parent and a grandmother say the things that are needed, and those are things that you're working on. So thank you for being here, and we will continue to think about your family and also say Lily's name as we do this work. So what we have found is the more questions you ask, the more dialogue you have, the more questions you ask, and the more dialogue you have. And it's a vicious cycle. So in our intervention work group, we are having open dialogue. And the purpose of that open dialogue is we want to create the opportunity for themes to continue to surface. Those things that continue to surface are those things that we want to drill down on. We have so many passionate people in our work group that we know each person comes from a space that wants to see that one thing corrected or something implemented in that area. But we want to make sure that we're providing recommendations that are buildable. And one of the things that I have on my notes here is that we want to create a template that can be universal across the state of North Carolina, but also has the bells and whistles that you can implement if your district, if your area can do that. The cherry on top is what we call it. So right now what we're looking at what exists. What exists, particularly in North Carolina? What has worked? Our last meeting, we had Fran Cook Mahood, who was Gang of One's executive director out of Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department, and that was disbanded. That was successful. It was disbanded probably 13 years ago. And she and I, at that point in time, we were the only ones in the state doing this work. So we brought a lot to the table in the conversation that we had. She brought stats. I talked about the development of program elements, which is the only gang prevention, intervention, and reentry program that is still in existence. And it operates under our wonderful Sheriff McMahon. He has been instrumental in how that has continued in providing sustainability for that. So we had some conversation around that. When we move forward, we have got a lot of work. So we are actually looking at creating subgroups so that we are not taking all of the time in our subcommittee meeting and our work group meetings to talk about things that may not be specifically an SME in that population. So when we move forward, we're looking at family engagement and root causes. We're looking at correctional settings, YDCs, what kind of success is happening there? Because we also want to keep in mind the reentry portion. How are we integrating these children back into our society from being incarcerated, from being in detention, what have you, and having access to other gang-involved youth? We want to explore adverse childhood experiences. We all know the role that trauma plays in the development of our children. In July, we're going to look at strategy and sustainability. We want to look at cross-agency collaboration. So when I say cross-agency collaboration, I'm also thinking about the work that Stephen does, the work that Kevin does, and we've already had conversations around how can we meet to make sure that this work group and the larger task force isn't doing what we see a lot of people in our communities doing, where we're stepping on each other's toes. We need to be organic. Anything that Kevin is doing in the prevention work group needs to fluidly and organically flow into intervention. And we also need to have conversations with that intelligence and law enforcement work group to make sure it is seamless. When we provide these recommendations, we want it to look as though we all had a communication part. We played a role in that. We want to look at workforce development. A lot of the kids that I've worked with, they will say to me, I have nothing. What am I working for? Why am I in high school? I can't go to college. I can't get a job. I have a record. I want to change that. I want to look at that through a different lens. What kind of partnerships can we have with community colleges, trades? What opportunities to build employment? What things are out there? So we're going to do a lot of conversation around that. I'm actually going to bring into our work group meeting a ex-gang member who has flourished in his professional life, his personal life. He has children. They call me auntie, and I love it, right? We're going to have them come into that space and talk about what it is that it took for him to see that there is that opportunity for him. We have crisis response and prevention, and I love that Ms. Toon talked about crisis response. What elements do we have to supplement law enforcement and our mental health agencies to go into communities when there is a crisis and offer support and resources? Then we have follow-up and gap analysis. So as Kevin mentioned, we want to look at our recommendations. Are they tangible? Are they doable? Can we replicate them across the North Carolina? And where's our gaps? Where's our needs? We want to be really reflective and make sure that whatever recommendations we're putting out aren't pie in the sky right now. These are doable. We can roll them out. They're easy to replicate. And we want to take a look at that with a fine-tooth comb to make sure what it is that we're recommending is actually something that is doable. So I think that takes us through October. And then we will submit our recommendations in November, and hopefully we will continue to do our work.
Thank you, Michelle. And one thing I would
Yeah.
I would love for y'all's group to work on and also look at is what we can do vis-a-vis intervention programs in custody.
Yeah.
Because I think that there's opportunity for, small programming in jails
Right.
and large programming in prisons.
Right.
And we heard the presentation that we have in our facilities, but we
Right.
have it in one place.
Right.
And it is 48 men, I think.
Yeah.
And so I think I've got hundreds, if not thousands, of
Yeah.
SRG members in custody, and I've got them for a sustained period of time. So
Yeah.
what can we do?
Right.
What programming can we run?
Right.
How could we, and even if it's as simple as trying to expand our current programming, but
Right.
needing funding for that.
Right. And
that's
that's one of those things that has become one of those broader issues, is how do we tackle those things that are kind of coming up? Like, we're going back to the drawing table with how we're defining intervention and how we look at the age group. The age population that we would, our recommendations would target is a difficult thing. So we want to make sure that we're being very strategic in how we do that. And also, Venetia, one of the staff, leads with us. She's going to lead some conversations with those in our work group that have that experience with incarcerated youth, how that looks, what kind of things are working, and is going to take our work group members that have that expertise and discuss that. Same thing with Tori. We're talking a lot with public health related policy, looking at this issue as a public health issue. So there's so many working parts. And so while I'm talking, Venetia and Tori, thank you so much. You're a wonderful asset, and we couldn't do what we do without. I'm telling you, we break this, like, this has become my show. So Venetia, no, it really is so helpful to have you two, and you are wonderful at what you do. So thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you. And so then next we'll hear from Stephen from our enforcement work group.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So our group, thus far, we've identified our 6-month plan, which is going to allow us to address the focus areas that were provided to us. Those include strategic enforcement, data collection and sharing, risk assessment, validation, and communication. So far, we've already had our first phase or targeting one of those focus areas, and that was validation. So we had experts come in. Tracy and Jenny were wonderful in setting that up. The experts came in, represented both sworn and non-sworn, juvenile justice, and we had our local police department and sheriff's office come in and talk to us about validation. Some of the themes of that conversation included the general statutes around validation criteria, the federal regulations that regulate how and when and how we store and share information, That validation criteria was discussed both how it's applied, both at the state level and at the local level. And then we also had a lot of discussion about training needs. In fact, training is something that's come up in every conversation that we've had in some form or fashion. And that's training directed at law enforcement, prosecutors, the community-based organizations, just all across the board. Gang trends change so quickly that's how quickly the training has to change, was part of our discussion. Some of the problems that we talked about and we hope our recommendations speak directly to involve law enforcement's appreciation for juvenile activity involved in gangs. So we want to find ways to allow law enforcement to have a better appreciation for those that are under 18 to be aware of the activity that those folks are involved in. The reluctance to acknowledge gang activity trends. This leads to underreporting and just situational awareness in different jurisdictions. Statewide gang intelligence repository is underutilized, as we discussed now. So we want to come up with ways to not only increase the participation by those law enforcement agencies, but we want to increase the value of that information that's being put into that system. And then again, training across the board for all parts. And then next month, we hope to discuss data collection and sharing, where we anticipate talking about questions about what do we know, what's missing, what's preventing us from sharing information right now, finding a balance between information sharing and privacy, and what can we do to improve those outcomes. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Let me ask you, and I know, I feel like I'm full of questions today, y'all, I'm sorry. In the working groups that y'all have, we don't have a district attorney because DAMs, you're on intervention, you're in intervention, okay. So we don't have a member from the Conference of District Attorneys that comes to the working group
Right.
meetings, right?
Boz is on our
He
meeting.
is, yeah. And like, obviously, he's been a former everything, so, but I do think that it would be helpful for us to maybe think about trying to reach out to the conference and have someone also come and talk, because I would add it to your plate, but I'm not gonna make you be on 2 committees. I mean, I'm not gonna force that on you, ma'am. I know you got a district to run. But I do think that it might be helpful also, because I was thinking about the validation and how we use validation in court and how the DAs use it, and whether there are any information or knowledge gaps that would be helpful to the DAs as they are using the validation criteria in court. So that's just a thought that I had.
Yep, that'll be easy for us to pull someone in for our next meeting. Yeah, we can do
And
that.
so Jamie, if you've got any ideas about, it might be good.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. And so that concludes our updates. And I think next on the schedule, we had a break.
I mean, we can roll through. Do y'all want to break or roll through? Let's roll. Everybody wants to roll. It's Tuesday after Memorial Day. Everybody wants to roll. Okay. Okay, what is Andrea here? You want to skip to Andrea and come back? Right, well, she's next. Oh, sorry. Yes, I was skipping ahead. Yeah, you want to do that? You want to reverse them? Yep. Okay. So you want to go, okay, so Cindy Porterfield is here, is the Director of Juvenile Community Programs at DJJDP. And so we are going to switch that up since we are pushing on through, and Andrea DeSantis, who will be with us to talk about workforce development, will come. We will just switch those two. So she is the Director of Juvenile Community Programs at DJJDP. With over 33 years of experience, she leads statewide efforts to develop prevention, intervention, and reentry services for at-risk and adjudicated youth, overseeing programs that serve more than 23,000 juveniles annually. She's a North Carolina certified criminal justice instructor, holds a degree in criminal justice and psychology from UNC Chapel Hill, go Heels, and has served in leadership roles across child and family services, including secure juvenile facilities and child mental health services. So to the point that we were talking about earlier, I think that we have a lot to learn from you, Cindy. So thank you for being here.
I'm happy to be here.
Good morning. I'm so happy to be here to talk to you about juvenile crime prevention councils. I've been doing this work for 26 years with juvenile crime prevention councils across the state. North Carolina has a well, I can do it manually. You want me to? I can run back and forth. It's fine. Okay, this right here. Yes. Thank you so much. North Carolina has a rich history of community-based programming in our state, and this began way back almost 50 years ago in 1977 with the establishment of community-based alternatives in the Department of Health and Human Services years ago. It began with a $1 million appropriation. That $1 million was really primarily to serve kids that were status offenders. And at that time, believe it or not, folks, we had status offenders in what was then known as training schools, our youth development centers, as they're known now. But that was the primary purpose, to remove them from our training schools. And also at that time, there was an establishment of a youth services advisory council, which was really the network that began by taking those movers and shakers locally in the community to help make decisions about how to address at-risk populations. And so along came the Juvenile Justice Reform Act of 1998, which really formalized and transformed that network that was developed in our state to be able to make more better decisions by guidance of general statute. So they were renamed, these WISACs were renamed to Juvenile Crime Prevention Councils. And the councils really served to take information locally and decide how an appropriation would be used, driven by general statute and membership and whatever services were needed locally at the local level. So the appropriation grew over time. And yes, with recession, it receded, but it built up to what is now about a $28 million appropriation that comes into the department. So I'm focusing today really on the Juvenile Crime Prevention Council of funding within the department that helps drive services at the local level. But there is another appropriation that I want to touch on just briefly, because I want my boss, Billy here, wanted me to talk a little bit about that, because we do some great intervention and cost-effective work in the state. So juvenile crime prevention councils really were established with a legislative intent to be able to organize people locally and plan at the local level to do this work. And there is a diversity of folks that serve in the membership, and they come from various organizations. Also, they are to focus on and prevent juvenile people from going deeply into the juvenile justice system. And they need to do so in a planned and organized way by developing programming locally in their local continuum to keep kids from going into our most secure facilities, which are YDCs, youth development centers. So there is a focus as well in the general statute that says that this body needs to take a look at not only delinquency, but kids with substance abuse issues and also kids that are gang involved. So we need to also, as a priority for juvenile crime prevention councils, look at how they're going to use their funding to meet the needs of courts by providing disposition option programming. So those are kids that end up on probation who need services like restitution, community service, etc. The JCPC is made up of a membership of up to 26 members. And the legislature was very smart in deciding how to elect this membership and lay it into the general statute. If you look closely, we've got folks from the education arena, folks from the court arena, folks locally who do recreational types of services, health department directors, people from the faith community, local sheriff and police department. So there's law enforcement and even up to 7 others that the county commission board can elect and place into the Juvenile Crime Prevention Council. Now, I'd like to think of this council as being folks who hold the purse strings, because I think that possibly part of the work can be done better with blended funding streams, right? So it's very smart in what our legislature did in aligning these folks up. They can serve and also have a designee in their place. Now, JCPCs have to meet at least bi-monthly by general statute, but they also are required by legislation to perform duties, and they do it in a very sophisticated manner. The JCPC looks at data from our court services folks, that's NC Join, and it also looks at data from programming that is already serving youth in the community that's been funded to do so, and that comes from NC Allies. It also looks at gang-related data locally, educational data, and it develops what it needs locally by assessing that profile of those kids in the community, what their offenses look like, how many there are in a system flow. Now, each county is awarded an allocation, and that allocation is what that JCPC uses to develop its request for proposal. They identify their gaps in services, and they design that local request for proposal to meet that continuum of need based on that offender profile and what the kids look like in their local community. So this is very unique decision-making based on what is not available in the community and what is needed based on that profile. So every JCPC as well creates an annual plan. And so it is turned into our state office every year, and we look at how that local juvenile crime prevention council decides how it's going to not only spend its money, but also decide on how to spend its money. So that continuum is developed locally, and it looks something like this. This is North Carolina's adaptation of the Federal Office of Juvenile Justice's comprehensive strategy. And we, in our section, community program section, we are intent on serving those kids all the way across that continuum, from at-risk kids, for kids that are most at the greatest risk, who end up getting into the juvenile justice system, and who need immediate disposition option programming as a resource from our court services folks. Now, kids coming in on the back end from a YDC, they also need services. And so juvenile crime prevention councils in their programming can offer up services to those youth as well. Now, how does the funding work? Well, that $28 million is appropriated from the General Assembly down to the department, and we work locally with all 100 counties in the dissemination of that money. Every county is delivered an allocation. The allocation is based on a formula. The formula is with a base amount and then a calculation of youth by population from ages 10 to 17. And so every county gets a base amount of about $35,000. And so we have counties like Mecklenburg that gets over $2 million, and a Hyde County that gets $59,000. So think about that in today's time and what you can do with $59,000 in terms of services. Somebody get me some water. So the money comes down locally, and the Juvenile Crime Prevention Council serves as an arm to the county commission board to do this work. The JCPC decides how the funding is going to be used through their RFP process. They award funding to individual nonprofit programs or 501c3s or governmental entities. And public housing also is eligible to receive the funds. Once the funds are awarded, that program enters into a program agreement that is a triplicate kind of contract. It is an agreement with the county, the state, and the nonprofit. And so that JCPC awards out that program agreement, really identifies how much the funding is for that, and there is a local match that is required by either the county, and some counties are very generous, and they have a 10, 20, or 30% match based on their tier of what the requirement is for that county. Otherwise, the nonprofits have to come up with their local match. So programming can be in what we like to think of in 5 general areas in terms of the type of services. Residential services are sometimes like emergency shelter programming, skill building programming, clinical assessment type programs, restorative justice like teen court, restitution community service, and structured day programs, which are kind of kids that get ousted from school with lots of, suspension. They often end up in those types of programs. So going back to that continuum and looking at that continuum of the comp strategy, these are the numbers that we serve across where these kids are in the juvenile justice system, whether they're at risk. About 14,000 kids are served in that arena, and about 8 are being served with juvenile justice involvement. And so they come into JCPC programs at various decision points along the continuum. They may get early on a referral from a law enforcement officer before they ever land over into a juvenile court counselor's office and with a referral. Who refers? Well, we like to look at this and break the population up. So it's really distinctive differences if you look at kids that are under the age of 12. So if school usually is the referral source for a lot of programming, parents and school resource officers. But once you get into the older population, we see juvenile court counselors doing the referrals and school resource officers. Now, the most utilized program types, it's about 5 of them that are used most with a cost of about almost $2,000 per youth served, and that is blended resources there. But restitution and community service is found in all 100 counties. Interpersonal skill building, teen court, assessment and academic enhancements. There are 22 different program types that are funded by JCPC programs. These are the ones that are most used. Gang activity is one thing that is looked at by the juvenile crime prevention councils. We have a gang screening tool the court services uses, and it is within the general statute that JCPCs have to take a look at that. This data was taken from our annual report. We had about 14,000 kids that were assessed, and 749 of them, or 5.2%, were found to be either affiliated with a gang or an associate or a member of a gang. So JCPCs are tasked with looking at that. And here in Wake County, here's an example of how JCPC dollars have been used to address gang activity. Haven House has a program called Second Round, and it is a boxing rink. The kids lay down their gang colors, and they mix together in groups. Now, the learning from that is, well, you got to tamper down your anger, right? And you got to be able to work with people. And these are really critical skills that are learned right there on the on the campus there, within the boxing ring. But they also give an opportunity for kids after school, a safe place after school, and teach them how to emotional regulate their feelings and promote positive relationship building at a cost of about $3,200 per child. And this project in Forsyth County is also a JCPC funded program, Project X. It is in the model of the National Gang, Comprehensive Gang model. It utilizes community outreach, street outreach folks. The project actually supports 2 street outreach workers there. They use the JCPC as a steering committee, and then they have an intervention team as well. Now, our other pot of money that I spoke to, our contractual fund that is a different appropriation, also helps support this program. It adds a person and a half more so that this program was able to serve 72 kids last year. And this is our newest project. Now, one thing that I can say about JCPCs is that they're perfect vehicles for pushing new ideas out that are effective. This educating kids about guns is a project that came out of Fayetteville PD. It's a small video that was shown in health classes for 7th and 8th graders. It took about maybe 2 days to move through the short little question answer module, but it helps kids learn the impact of gun violence on different perspectives of folks within the community. For example, there were vignettes in the video that talked about the impact on court or the emergency room or the victim. And kids got to understand that as they moved through looking at the video and answering questions. We thought we could take this one step further. In our section, all of our programs are evidence-based practice models. We make sure that we fund only effective programs. And so we knew that in order to make this work and get it to a place where it can reduce the gun violence and additional incidents with guns, that it had to meet the standard of what we call our standardized program evaluation protocol. Now that's a mouthful, but that is Mark Lipsey, Vanderbilt University's research about the effectiveness of programs and how well we do that is with the frequency and duration of effective program models to reduce recidivism. And so with a team of folks from Fayetteville and other areas around the Fayetteville area, that team pulled together a 12-week curriculum so that they could meet frequency and twice a week and duration of 12 weeks using a new 2.0 model video to be able to effectively reduce gun violence. And this project is being, we're seeking GCC funds to be able to do this project statewide. Now we've already had a vehicle, that JCPC as the vehicle to push this along and fund this program model in Robeson County. So we're excited to see that happen. Now, all that goes without saying that we know that our programs work. Our programs actually are studied to death by the Sentencing Commission. The Sentencing and Policy Commission studies our juvenile population. As they step through the door, they slice, dice, and they determine how well our work is being done in the section, and not only the section, but the division. And so I wanted to kind of share this recidivism rates because as a comparison with JCPC funded programs, I think it's important that you see that the deeper kids get into the system, the higher their recidivism is. And so our kids that are committed recidivate overall at about a 57% rate. Similarly, in the study of JCPC funded programs, there's a similar pattern that if we serve them front end without any juvenile justice involvement, we see lower recidivism rates. And of course, if they're court involved and receiving a JCPC program, they're recidivating at a higher rate, but it's much less than the 57% of, recidivism rate for kids that actually penetrate our system. So overall, we're doing a great job in JCPC funded programs. I wanted to share with you a little bit about our teen court evaluation too, because this has really been exciting work that we partnered with the Office of State Budget and Management to take a look at how effective those restorative justice models were working. And so we looked back in time at our data and looked at 68 counties with the traditional teen court model. And I have to say that in order to differentiate, because we have some other restorative justice models that are peer-driven as well, but they're peer circles and just a different model. So we purely looked at the traditional teen court model. And then we looked at counties where we did not have a traditional teen court model. And we looked at, as the control group, where those kids went. One group went to diversion. One group went straight into the juvenile justice system. Now, mind you, all of these kids had the same offenses. We aligned and compared apples to apples here. And what we found was that those who received teen court recidivated at a much lower rate than those who went on through the traditional court system, at a 33% versus 5%. And even those that went into diversion programming recidivated at much lesser rate there. So now we're prepared to make some decisions about this. Of course, we're asking for expansion funds in JCPC constantly with our legislative body there. We want to improve this work over time. We know that our work is good, but we think we can get better at it, particularly if we can do a cost-benefit analysis. And so we're prepared now to run this model through OSBM's benefit cost analysis formula in order to be able to really tell what we get back from each state dollar spent, which kind of brings me to the work that we did in that state level contracted services in cost benefit analysis. These programs really do serve our deeper in kids, the court involved gang related activity, juveniles that really are costly to serve. And so I wanted to briefly share with you a little bit about this great work. So this focus on our group homes, our transitional living homes, our functional family therapy. These are large state contracts that serve youth across the state. And in this study, we looked at those high-risk youth who did not receive that intensive service to get our baseline. And about 55% of them will recidivate in 5 years, in that 5-year period of time. And these are our most high-risk kids in the division. And for each, yes?
That last line.
Uh-huh.
When you're looking at the repeat offenses, is that the crime of commission or the crime of adjudication?
These
You
were,
see what I'm saying? Like,
yes.
Split down, or was it?
I think these were adjudications.
So it could have been something higher.
It could have been.
I was just looking at the high misdemeanor.
Yes, and most of the recidivating events in this baseline study were misdemeanors. Thank you for your question. I think the most valuable information that came out of this in this cost benefit analysis study was the cost of one recidivating event, and that is $120,000. So if we could stop that one recidivating event, I think we've done good service with our taxpayers' dollars. And looking at that, most of those costs involved with that recidivating event is cost to the victim. Whether or not the juvenile later on can get high-paying jobs, it affects their job capacity, et cetera. Now, this was a takeaway from this learning, and that was that not only did we look at the group homes, transitional homes, but we looked at functional family therapy, which is an evidence-based model, and where where the kids are in the continuum when they're referred to the program. And so kids re-entering after being in a youth development center, re-entering back into the community, really, we found that that's where we got more bang for the buck. We got about a $9 per dollar spent return, and with the benefit of about $60,000 per participant at a cost of $6,400 and benefit of $60,000. So if we look at the kids that were usually being referred to FFT were right there in that continuum. Juveniles that were on probation, they needed that's where they would fall along the continuum. But where we learned was that it was most impactful coming out of YDCs. So we hope that our JCPC programs can be picked apart based on program type now. All programs have to be evaluated though before they can move into the cost benefit arena. And now transitional living, that's an option too for gang related kids. Oftentimes if kids want to break out of gangs and not, we put them into our transitional living programs and help them develop skill sets that can move them on into independence. And this is one of our newer models. It's the farm in Wayne County. It's a 4-bed program. The kids actually have a high tunnel there, greenhouse, and they learn entrepreneurial skills. It's been one of our wonderful transitional living homes out of the 4 that we have. And then it also falls into that cost benefit analysis study with a value-based therapeutic environment that is the model, and that we get back about $13 per dollar spent, and it reduces recidivism by 26%. And these are our internal numbers here of recidivism. And these are adjudication and adult convictions for total, because some of our kids are older and if they do recidivate, they're in the adult arena, and you'll see at 12 months, 16 or 25% recidivism at 16 and 12 months respectively. And so I think the takeaway here is that JCPCs and the work that they do is very cost effective. The programming is cost effective. It keeps kids out of our more intensive programming. Our residential programs on average cost about $36,000 per youth, as compared to $132,000 cost of a youth in a youth development center. So I think we do a really good job here, and this is really going to be slow, in closing the gap here and keeping our kids out of the juvenile justice system. Juvenile Crime Prevention Council serve well over 22,000 kids every year. And if you look at this, this nice little graph here, I think we do a great job in honing in on that targeted serious chronic and violent offenders. Our low numbers of kids in YDCs is an attestment to that, and what we do in the community in a cost-effective way and in an efficient way. So I'm willing to take any questions now. It's our hope that we, serve the right kid at the right time with the right service. Yes.
I had one, I know it's way back, but you had a graph that showed the general trend line seems to be down for gang involvement.
Mhm.
Was that specific to JCPC? Because I'm wondering how that correlates to what we saw in the legislative report saying there's an increase in gang activity. I'm sure there's a difference, but I was just wondering.
That was from our annual report, and I will tell you there is a little subscript there because the decline is not because of anything we've done. It's because of the result of that 16 and 17-year-old population with violent offenses being now served or having to go to criminal court,
Okay.
adult court.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah, I was just wondering how.
Yeah.
What the differences were between this one and what we saw in the report. Thanks.
Yeah.
NIBRS data.
Yeah.
The other one's NIBRS.
Yes.
Are you seeing any indicators of what child's going to respond to these sort of interventions versus what child isn't?
I think that we in the department.
Tori was on the microphone.
Okay.
Just for the folks online. I was just asking if you know of any indicators, the children that are going to respond to this sort of intervention and prevention versus those that don't.
I think that that's a great question. our court services folks do a really good job of using decision-making tools that help us to be able to match kids to the appropriate service. And so we're hoping that we do that on the front end, that we've matched the child appropriately first. But indicators, yes, we know that we can't serve felons in teen court. So that'd be like, no, that's just a criteria there for the program model. But the YAZI and the sophistication of the YAZI and also the integration of the trauma, it's our assessment tool. It's a youth assessment and screening instrument. I think I hope I got that right. We had the NCAR, which was our assessment tool, our in-house assessment tool assessment for risk, North Carolina's assessment for risk. That was a predictor of how well, kids would do and or how well they wouldn't do based on their higher levels of risk. So predictors, I'd say we're getting more sophisticated with that based on our decision-making tools, our risk and needs assessment that we're doing, and also the integration of trauma. Trauma is a learning arena that we're all taking on right now, not only for our court services folks in looking at the front end where these kids are in terms of their exposure to trauma, but also how the treatment program, how we relate to the kids once they're there. Yes.
Everybody.
Okay, in our work group intervention, you mentioned teen court, and I think you said, I don't want to misspeak, you said 68 counties it is in, because we was looking at how that could collaborate with our group and what that looks like and how it works. So I wrote down some things, but was it 68 counties you said it's in now?
Well, that was the study.
Okay.
So we had to go back in time because ethically, right, we cannot choose like, child, you go to a program, you don't go to a program. We can't do that ethically. So we had to go back in time. And so we went back in time to pick out those 68 counties with the treatment. But we have, I'd say 92 counties have a teen court program. Some have fallen away with funding deficiencies. But yes, if you want to partner for teen court, any activity, because I think that the model itself is wonderful, and it also integrates kids in the community to do the volunteers work with teen court. The volunteers come in and they're part of the jury. They get credit. When I was in high school, we didn't have to do that, but don't they have to get some kind of community service credit now? Well, that's how a lot of kids are getting it, is by serving on just juries, the jury in teen court. So yes, we'd be happy to talk with you afterwards and connect you.
Other questions? I have several. I know that surprises no one, but I wanted to give everybody an opportunity first.
I have another question,
Before
sorry.
Simon, yeah.
And this might be an unfair question. What percentage would you say of the gang involved youth do you think you guys interact with?
In community programs?
In JJ.
That might be a Billy question. I mean, we do direct services. The court services folks are going to be interacting with that 5.2% at least, numerous times during the month. And coupled with our interventions, I would say a fairly large percentage that end up in the 1,500 kids that go to our residential programs in the community program section are gang involved.
So a couple of you said something, Cindy, at the beginning, and I actually had written it down before you said it, which is these JCPCs sound like a great way to get programming out to all 100 counties. And so something that we've been talking about the task force is making it sustainable, and the work of the task force is sustainable. So the recommendations that we come up with, how do we make sure that they get to every county? How do we make sure that it perpetuates in every county, right? So the JCPC link sounds like a really good way to do that. And so I think that our recommendation could incorporate lifting up the expansion requests and the funding requests for JCPCs, but also incorporating the gang programming that we would recommend to be run through JCPCs because it's an established framework that has proven successful. But I guess my question is, do you find that some counties are doing it better than others? And the reason that I asked that is, so for us, we have the local reentry councils, right, at TAC. They're not all created equal, right? And they're also not legislatively mandated like the JCPCs, but we struggle in some areas because some work better than others. And do you find the same thing in the JCPCs? And is there also a need for more oversight for some of those? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes. So in the section, we have 14 folks, the consultants that give technical assistance locally to juvenile crime prevention councils, but also they monitor the programs. And so they ensure that JCPCs are functioning in meeting the general statute in terms of their duties, but they also give technical assistance in teaching. And so I would say that we run a very standardized ship here. If you get $59,000, the same thing is required for you as the $2 million JCPC. And so I think with the assurance of our staff in the section that happens on a regular basis, very standardized. They're open meetings. Anyone can come. So I encourage any of you who have not been to a JCPC in your county, please attend one. But yeah, I think we run a really tight ship where it's all governed by standard operating procedures and also by policy. So all programs of those 5 major areas of types of programs have policy that governs how they do their work. And we report on outcomes for these programs through annual reports every year. So there's an accountability at the state level that trickles down to the county level.
So that's 14 people in JJ's shop who are tasked with doing all of that. Is that enough people? No, it's not enough.
I always say it's not enough, but
More could help.
More could help. Our people are, it's cyclical work, and it's a varying type of work. Every day is different. But yes, I have 4 area managers that supervise within the 4 regions of the state, those 14 folks that sit in the communities. And there's very, the work is divided by territory. And they perform the oversight as well as monitoring of all programs. Any other questions? Yes.
This isn't a question, but just I've participated in our New Hanover County JCPC for a while, and it's one of the best groups that I am a participant in. And I find that in the last few years in particular, I've tried really hard to get our nonprofit really actively engaging. And I found the more we engage, the more we learn. I always learn something in those meetings, and there's just incredible collaboration. So I just want to commend you for all that work. It's a great group.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Pam Stokes as a consultant.
Yep.
I just want to add a comment that the farm program that Cindy was talking about and the transitional program that's actually started in Craven County actually came out of the last task force. Was one of the recommendations that came out of that task force, because we had a lot of young people that were gang involved that couldn't go back home, because if they went back home, they would immediately get back in that gang. And so those transitional programs like the farm that we have in Goldsboro and the Craven County program, they're extremely important, because the kids tell us that while they're in the YDC, that if I go back home, there's no chance for me. And so these offer these young people that opportunity to work off the good work. I always tell people, Cindy talked about that cost of $130,000 to send a kid to a YDC. That's a huge investment. And then we just throw that investment away if we just send them back exactly to where that kid was coming from before. And so these transitional facilities are extremely important, I think, especially for the gang involved kids, because it gives them an opportunity to get out of their community and go somewhere else so they don't get immediately drawn back into that same culture.
And then what happens, Billy, right? So after they finish at the transitional housing program, if they're 12, they got to go home somewhere. So how is what's the back end of that look like?
Yeah, so a lot of the kids that are actually going to the transitional facilities, by the time they get there, they're a little bit older. So they're going to be, at least 16 or 17 by the time they get there. because they've gone through the whole system by that point to get
They'd
to
be
the transitional home.
emancipated by the time they get.
And so we're actually working with them on transitional living, meaning transitioning into adulthood, so that they can live independently. So we partner with Methodist Home for Children. And that's the other part that I would highlight from the JCPC and from the transitional programs. JCPC, for every dollar we put into it, the counties match almost $1 back. And that's not, they aren't required to match that much. They choose to match that much because they see the return on investment they're getting. Same thing is true with the transitional living programs. We're working with Methodist Home for Children, and they actually provide the kids with scholarships to go to community college if they do well in the program. They provide them with a car through Wheels for Dreams and get them opportunity with that. And they do that with local fundraising at local churches. And so, yes, there's state dollars that go into these programs, but there's a lot of local money and fundraising that goes into making sure these kids have opportunities. So they go into independent living. From there, a lot of times they'll get them started in an apartment. One of the requirements for transitional living is they have to have a job. So they get a job, and all the money that they earn while they're in that job, they have to save, and they learn how to start a bank account. They learn how to do their finances. And so it's something that a lot of kids don't know how to do anymore. And so it teaches them those basic skills, and they get to see, if I was paying for rent, this is how much it was going to cost me this month. This is how much my utilities would have cost. All those costs that are adding up, they get to see that picture, and they create that savings account so they can get back into an apartment and into independent living after that. If they have to go back home, typically we try to find them a relative or somebody that's not in that home community that they can go back to, so they don't have to go back to that home community where they were gang involved before.
And how are you resourced for that? I mean, are you under resourced for that, being able to provide that service?
Well, since Representative Bell's here, yeah, that is one of our department's requests this session, is to enhance that model. We haven't had additional funds for residential placements for transitional or for JCPC since 2020. So it's been 6 years since we've had an increase in either one of those funding buckets. And the daily rates obviously have been continuing to go up in those programs because of gas and food and all the costs that are associated with the program. So yeah, that it is a need moving forward to look at those expansions.
We also have situations where kids are homeless. They leave YDCs, don't have a place to go. So transition can serve as a resource for them, but also we've developed housing first models for our kids. We've got 2 pilots right now that we use SFRF funds to help. And I'd say I can count on 2 hands, maybe, the number of kids each year that leave YDCs that need that as a resource. We have one that is in Guilford County and one here in Wake County that serve kids statewide. Are there any other questions? Thank you so much for the lively dialogue.
Thank you for being
Thank
here
you.
today. This has been
Thank
very,
you.
very, very helpful.
Thank you so
very
much.
much.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to take a 10-minute break before our next speaker. So let's be back at 10:30 on the dot. That's fantastic. This is all so super, super, super helpful.
Yeah, it's great. I changed the name to Case.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I just want to say hi. We're across the paths. Oh, yeah, likewise. We're excited this summer to get a chance to do summer. And it's always been great. And actually, just the other day, sorry, my wife and I wanted and this year actually helps us.
Maybe because I to me.
I think we're locals, obviously. But it's great.
Discharge work.
He was great. Yeah, he was actually. Yeah. I just want to introduce myself. We work with elephants.
No, we do.
Quite regularly. They're close to market right now, so. Yeah. Appreciate it. Yeah, thank you. Yes.
You need to go.
Seasons, probably gonna think about that top end of that threshold. That takes, to be honest. Baby is he is a strong person. Yeah, I'll try. Take it easy person. Or they're not gonna be. Like that was the same as me. There was so many people that me a chair in that particular agency. What they do, teach them what they do, and just so that's gonna come out when you use that.
Yeah, it'll be.
Yeah, so you'll be able to feel it. But I really think it's just a master's. One of the bachelor's and just kind of that. Beginning of this master's. Behavioral risk. What that is, what's going on psychologically. If I'm looking at that right, they are choices of major assessing person and then social workers. To services.
I was wondering if I missed that.
No, you don't. See, a bachelor's lesson is kind of skimming the surface. Masters, you're diving deep in. Okay, here's the issue. Nicole says that there's a threat here. I understand what that is. Yeah. Dive into family dynamic. I'm just in there. Either one you look at, you want to think about. Basically, she's talking
20 days.
Yeah, most of the stuff. So I think.
Is there
Education?
it's a preference.
Master's?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Where, where else should I be sharing?
National Association for Social Workers.
Association of what?
Social workers, they have a job.
It's always hard having. Yes. Hey. Yes. Yeah, sorry, got locked in or locked in. But we could figure out.
Yeah, I'll send you an email and
They just kind of go there and they see.
Good, thank you.
This is your first.
No, it's my second, but my kids are 10 years apart, so I forgot.
Yeah, I'm sure it's like a new experience.
And I'm like, the cost is triple, or, you know. Oh, gotta wait a second. Don't even think about it. It's too early. Yeah. It's crazy to decide.
Yes, well,
But,
you know,
yes, please.
if I don't email your case.
I will do that. I will do that.
So that's
You too.
But I don't know her. And so it's listed by category. People fill that out and just press search and brings up all the jobs. So, is that her name? They didn't figure out how, like, I get to go back to the, I'm not sure how you said it, but. Okay. In that page. Okay. And then I also.
Yeah, no, good.
I can do a lot of pushing that out for you and mine. Style down. It's like, I'm trying to think. I've got two.
But I found my resources. So I found my way back to North Carolina for high school. But I can now
Demographic.
up in Warrenburg in 2021. And I was yes.
Okay.
I know a bunch of people over there, but if I name something, it's not gonna be like, it's just saying check of everybody.
He
gave me that. Yeah, so I
But I'm
know.
thinking, I just graduated. Really good. Hit there. That's where they're gonna be looking. And longevity, you probably would be there for 30 years, but if you, there you go. I'll send an email. I'll post it and I'll send a couple emails.
Yes.
Okay, that's helpful. And then I'm gonna tell, I'll be meeting with Earl and Nicole today.
Certainly.
And anybody that
My wheels were turning.
has a question
So.
or want to talk about it, because I would be interested in. Depending on how many people put in, we might not be able to do it, but I'm actually having a conversation with any and all of these people before the.
Right.
To give them some respect.
Yeah.
And then to give me some insight.
Yeah.
And then we-
Yep. I've got one.
Okay, everyone. Thanks for coming back. Our next presentation will be from Andrea DeSantis, and looks like she's all set and ready to go. But she'll be talking to us a little bit about the workforce development work happening at the city.
Morning, everyone. Thank you so much for the invitation to be here. I'm really excited to share about the work we do within the NC Work system. As Sarah mentioned, I'm Andrea DeSantis, Services Assistant Secretary of Workforce Solutions over in the North Carolina Department of Commerce. And so just I want to share a little bit of background about the NC Work system, work that we're doing across the state, and excited about this conversation to think how we can better partner, especially with our folks in juvenile justice and continue our great relationships with DAC across the state. But we know North Carolina has been ranked highly for workforce development as well as for business for several years running. And that is in great part due to really strong partnerships across our workforce system, our education partners, and our business community. But we want to make sure that every North Carolinian can really take part in this success and have access to not just a job, but a job that leads them to a career with a family sustaining wage and a place that they can grow over time, but importantly, stay in their community to have that job. And so I'm really looking forward to a dialogue today to think how we can better partner with you all and in your community to support gang prevention. So just a little background about our NC Work system. It's once again a collaboration between the North Carolina Department of Commerce, our 20 local workforce development boards, which are all locally run. They're run by chief local elected officials who appoint a board that is made up of 50% of private sector members. So really wanting to have strong business community representation, especially from healthcare, advanced manufacturing, and industries that we know are growing across the state. Together, we run about 70 NC Works career centers. These career centers, sometimes they're standalone organizations. Our centers, often we partner though with different community organizations to make sure that when individuals are coming to look for a job, that they're also getting access to additional resources. In our centers, we do initial employment preparations. So really thinking about job searches, resumes, cover letters. We host a number of career fairs and job fairs. The great part about these job fairs is often they're designed to hire folks on the spot and really making sure that we can do that matchmaking between employers and job seekers. Additionally, we also have funding available to support education and training programs. We typically partner with our community colleges. And we do a lot of training in transportation and logistics, healthcare, advanced manufacturing are our main sectors of focus. But really, this is a way for us to identify what are the needs of an individual. How do we get them to work for the first time, especially in the case of youth, or how do we get them back to work? We also host ncworks.gov, which is our online platform and really gives folks a chance to do these searches anywhere, access our resources. We're also rolling out virtual desk opportunities right now so that individuals can access our services virtually from anywhere in the state. Talked a little bit about this. I'm gonna move forward, but just to highlight that this is really, our system cannot work without partnerships with employers. That is essential because we cannot have individuals just showing up on the job site and not coming into an environment that's going to be supportive of them. We've worked recently with some ARPA funds on substance use disorders and getting people back into careers. We've got to make sure those employers are prepared to support individuals. Same thing with the great work happening in collaboration with DAC around individuals reentering. We've got to really hone in on those relationships and make sure employers can, one, see the value of who they're hiring, and two, make sure that they come in as partners in this work. So a little bit just about who we serve. About 23,000 employers that we partner with annually, about 84,000 job seekers. And that's really our broad set of services, anywhere from somebody showing up at a career fair to the more intensive coaching that we provide and education and training. I wanted to give you some of the just specifics on the individuals that we serve. And these are the categories that we have to provide data on to the federal government. So thinking about those who have been involved with the justice system. The first two columns are our more intensive services. Our last one are those broader services around just career development and general job searches. But wanted to pull out some of the categories that I think you all might be interested in. And I would say this to me demonstrates that we still have a lot of work to do and a lot of opportunity for partnership when you think about this scale of challenges across the state. And so want to highlight, like, there is work being done, but really looking to hear your ideas about where we can better integrate, especially as you all have to provide recommendations this coming year.
Andrew, is this year, or is this to date, or?
This was last program year, so would have been July 1st, 2024 through, yeah. We'll have our numbers for this year, just in early July. So within NC Works, we do have a specific set of services for youth. These are 16 to 24-year-olds, those that are facing real barriers and challenges to the workforce. And we have a funding that comes down from the federal government. It's about $18 million. It goes out to the 20 local workforce development boards. And it is designed to support both in-school youth, so those still in high school, as well as those who are disconnected, many of whom have stopped out and are in need of a GED. We have most of our local boards that are spending those dollars on youth that have already been disconnected. I will talk later in my presentation about some new work that was recently directed by Governor Stein to really support in-school youth. A little bit more about the individuals that we serve through the Next Gen program. You can see, like, it's about earning credentials, but it's also about giving folks access to work-based learning opportunities, connection with the world of work, and having them enter into a pathway. You can see, 3/4 of individuals do remain employed after 1 year. I will say that we're happy with those results, but we also think that's another opportunity for growth. And we've really tasked our local workforce development boards with this upcoming year of funding that they've got to work to increase employment outcomes for all individuals that they serve. That's got to be a real focus for them in the upcoming year. And so, just highlighting that one of the major areas that we've been focusing on in this state is really around work-based learning and making sure that individuals can have that connection. Work-based learning can look a few different things. One, it could be that internship that we, might think of from our past experience. Two, pre-apprenticeships. This is a key area of focus from the governor. How do we increase access to pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship opportunities? And then how do you leverage those to move into a career and earn a credential? These are just, two highlights. I won't read through them, but I will say that this work, when you go out to our NC Works career centers, and we have one not too far from here, the career coaches that do this work are so passionate. It is about these individual stories. Folks are coming in, as you know, with multiple areas that they need additional support. They face trauma. And so to be able to work one-on-one with individuals, make sure they earn a high school diploma or an equivalency, and then are on that pathway. I hope, and happy to talk with you all if there's opportunity to visit one of our career centers, but just wanted to highlight that this is an area where folks are really energized to do more across the state. So back in February, Governor Stein announced the NC Career Launch Program. This is a continuation of a program that was funded by the Department of Labor a couple of years ago to the North Carolina Business Committee for Education, which is a work-based learning nonprofit housed in the governor's office. And really the design of this work is to increase access to pre-apprenticeship opportunities for in-school youth. While some of that work has been going on across the state, the students that have been able to participate are typically students that are doing well. While they might face some financial barriers, they're maybe not students that are traditionally seen as at risk, potentially facing, deeper challenges. And so with the announcement back in February, Governor said, okay, now we're going to use some governor's reserve dollars from the federal funds that Commerce received. And we really want to bring in our local career centers and our workforce development boards to engage more youth who are in school and prevent stop out while in high school. So the first round of these programs are happening this summer. Many of them are building on programs in existing communities. We've got some work out in the western part of the state, some work in the eastern part of the state, in the Wayne, Wilson, Craven area. But we're really looking to grow this over the next year with some opportunities we hope that will develop in the spring, and then new opportunities in the summer of 2027. Because we feel like the more students that we can engage, bring them into the system, provide them this foundation, and also work-based learning that is paid. From all of our learnings and research, we know that students often opt out of good opportunities when they're not paid because they need access to a job that provides them with an income or can help support their family. So I'm really excited about this, and will certainly be happy to share more information as this develops over the next couple of months. I wanted to share briefly about the great partnership that we have with DAC. Really thankful to you, Secretary, and your team. And earlier in my presentation, I shared that we've had this NC Works online portal. This is where folks, across the state are accessing job searches. We wanted to make that accessible in DAC facilities, and we're really excited that we've been able to do that in several facilities across the state, and that is growing. This is a version of NC Works Online that is appropriate for the facilities, and I know there's more work that we want to do with providing real-time access to the jobs available, and then supporting individuals applying for those jobs pre-release. And then we do have 2 discretionary grants right now from the Department of Labor to support reentry work. So one of them is the PROUD grant. We have received about $10 million back in over the past 4 years, as in 2022, and this is to work with federal reentry programs. So we're currently working with Butner facility to support, once again, that credential attainment while folks are incarcerated, and then preparing individuals for release. There's 3 stages of the work. So that work in the facility, the work when folks first transition out for 6 months to a year and are in some sort of transitional housing, and then a 3rd phase to continue their development and hopefully support them in the same job over time. So we are really fortunate. This grant was set to end, I believe, in September, but we did get a 6-month extension on that grant. So has been a great relationship with Butner, and certainly more work to do here. And then and for the purposes of time, but want to share a little bit about our connection to other state initiatives. We know that there are a number of different councils, task force happening right now, and I would say it has been really wonderful to watch the clear integration and how workforce development has been a piece of numerous task force, but also that we're seeing the same message throughout, and excited to, think about the partnership here. But one, with Reentry 2030, continue to work on advancing access to credentials, education programs, partnering with employers, and then apprenticeship programs. Of course, we're really thrilled about the JFF grant that DAC received to really deepen employer relationships across the state. That is going to benefit us in incredible ways. And so want to highlight that. And then next, want to share about the Governor's Council on Workforce and Apprenticeship. This council was stood up about a year ago and had a very quick timeline for a council of 25 members representing state agencies, our education partners, so the community colleges, UNC, the independent colleges, Commerce, as well as members of the General Assembly, and probably most importantly, employers from major industries across the state. They said, we want to holistically grow the workforce, but we want to make sure that it's everybody in the state that has access to this work. And so council devised 11 goals. Most of them are around increasing work-based learning opportunities, increasing apprenticeship opportunities, employer engagement, and then increasing the number of individuals with credentials. We know, though, to do this work, we've got to dive in, and the council now is working on strategies that are in particular going to address individuals from rural communities, those who are formerly incarcerated, people with disabilities, and veterans. Really making sure, once again, that the programs are tailored to specific needs of communities, and we don't rely on sort of the reactive services that we sometimes can let ourselves do. Say, oh, well, whoever comes in, we serve. But we've really got to get into our communities and find out what the barriers are and make sure our services are tailored to those individuals. So I'm excited about this. And then last week, the governor announced the state's economic development plan. And so you'll see in that plan also a call out to workforce. And so once again, knowing like we cannot continue to be that is best in business if we do not push ourselves on what workforce development looks like. Importantly, thinking about resiliency, especially in the time of AI, and making sure that we can adjust to what's coming ahead. So with that, stop there. Happy to answer any questions. Also look forward to your ideas about if you're developing this report, how we might best support you all in that work.
What is your involvement with juvenile justice? I don't know if y'all have a relationship already.
I would say right now, one of the reentry 2030 subcommittees that Dr. Brooke Wheeler and I took, we do have representatives from juvenile justice. We have not taken, I think, the next steps that we need to really increase our engagement beyond, you know, the subcommittee work. So we would love to see that.
Well, thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you.
All right, so I think we have one more presentation on our schedule, which is about the PAL program in Wilson, North Carolina. So I'm going to welcome up Major Chelsea Sanders and Courtney Jones for this presentation. Bear with us, y'all. We're getting the slides together.
I will just say, y'all, while they're doing that, one of the things I think, oh, well, never mind. We can talk later. I can fill space.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
I am Courtney Jones. I'm an administrative assistant with the Wilson Police Department. I've been there a little bit over 5 years now. I am also the treasurer of our POW program, which is our Police Athletic and Activities League in Wilson. I will let Major Sanders introduce herself and then we'll take it from there.
Yes, ma'am. So good morning. My name is Chelsea Sanders. I am a major with the Wilson Police Department. Been there around 16 years now. Got introduced to our PAL program in early 2010 when I was hired with them, and now I am the president of PAL.
Thank you all for having us. We are so excited to be here with you this morning. We just want to talk about our POW program and the impact that it has on our community. in Wilson. I will like to ask a question. How many people have heard of a PAL program at other agencies? Okay, so you guys are kind of familiar with what PAL is. Wilson does like to pride themselves. They say that we have the best PAL program known to man. But, all the other PAL programs are great too, but we do feel like we've tried to take it to another level. So, mission and impact. The mission of our PAL is to foster a structured environment and create a positive big brother, big sister relationship. PAL is dedicated on instilling a value system that will provide youth enrichment through life lessons. By this, we hope to build a stronger community relation and deter criminal behavior. So with our PAL program, it supports the youth of Wilson. It's grown to where surrounding counties even have kids come in to participate. So it's not just limited to Wilson and Wilson County. We have people come from Nash counties, Edgecombe and surrounding areas to participate in our sports camps that we have throughout the year, which we host about 36 or more. And then we also have mentoring programs that we host, which are smaller group settings where we come in and we have a more intimate relationship with these kids. We build those relationships. We help keep track of what they have going on in school and life in general and different things like that. We do take day trips on Saturdays where we do informative things with them. A little bit of the history. So in the early 1980s, clearly community policing and law enforcement came out strong. The leaders around that time decided to kind of initiate a little bit of that PAL program, explorers, those type things. So we started out as a football camp, something simple. I don't think that anyone had any expectations of it going to the levels that it did, but they had a great amount of kids come out and show interest. So then some of the people in charge are like, well, let's try to do another camp. So they did the baseball and the softball. Again, they started generating all this interest. And in 2015, retired Chief Thomas Hopkins, retired Captain Eric Smith, Reggie Smith, who was also a captain with us, decided to apply to be a nonprofit. The city was supporting many of our camps in enrichment, but to kind of get more money in so that we could really reach more youth, they decided to go the nonprofit route so that we could do fundraisers, grants, get donations from different donors. And today we get over $50,000 in grants a year. And then we do a lot of different fundraisers. We have a food truck where we cook briskets, ribs. So if you guys ever want to have a cookout, we'll come and cook for you. But we do different things throughout the year to, again, bring in money. What we do today, PAL offers sports camps, football and cheer, which are our biggest. They are actually coming up in about 2 or 3 weeks. Once school lets out, we have like a small break, and then we'll hit the ground running with our summer camps, which are, like I said, the football and cheerleading camps are the biggest. Last year we had over 200 kids each day in a week's time for the football and cheer camp. The following week we lead off with baseball, softball, soccer is our second largest camp, where we have over 100 kids come every day last week for a week. Volleyball, kickball, dodgeball. Pickleball was implemented last year. I don't know if we have any pickleball players in the room, but we did implement it for a couple of days just to kind of see how it went over. The kids loved it. And so we have decided that it would be one of those camps that we implement as a week-long camp also. Like we do our cheerleading, football, baseball, soccer, and the other camps. Mentoring, like I stated, is one of those things where we take the smaller groups between the ages of 9 and 14. We have them come in on Friday evenings and we do different activities with them. Then we take a day trip on Saturdays, depending on what we have going on. Sometimes we'll go out of town, sometimes we'll stay in town, but we do those things that kind of help foster a better bond with these kids, to show them that we're there and it's not just about protecting and serving, but also the community-oriented policing aspect of it. Christmas in the South is our biggest event of the year. So about 2 years ago, I was voluntold that I was going to start going out in the community and asking for donations for our Christmas in the South. So I started going out and I started asking for funds. And year before last alone, I received $15,000 in donations for Christmas toys. And these people, we served over 1,000 families last year, and it's from ages 0 to 17. The families come in and we have tables set up at one of the local community centers in Wilson. And the families come in, they bring their children, and they can pick out whatever toys that they want. So that's one thing, whereas we're helping out a lot of families in the community also where some children may not be able to enjoy Christmas as other kids would otherwise.
And I will say, our Christmas in the South program has been in place for over 20 years. Another retired officer by the name of Reggie Branch, who grew up in the community, saw the need. It started off small. I think they may have served 15 families that first year. And again, since that time until now, we serve over 1,000 families. And as well as they get gifts, they get food boxes as well. So turkeys, all your sides. We walk it to the car and we turn no one down. So we'll start off giving each kid 3 to 4 gifts. As we move through the line to ensure that everyone gets a gift, we start increasing more because it's not our goal to take it home. We want to ensure that all our kids have at least a happy Christmas.
As stated, all programs are free of charge to our participants. We provide transportation to and from camps for all the participants that are not able to have a parent get them there due to work obligations or not having transportation. We provide a full breakfast, a full lunch, hydration throughout our activities. And we also take the participants home once our camps are over with. Like Major Sanders just stated, with Christmas in the South, with our camps and things, we don't turn anyone away. Everyone's welcome. And we're able to fund a lot of what we do, community donations, fundraising, like she stated, and local businesses and grants.
And again, I think that was a goal while we went toward the nonprofit side so that we could get money in. And so that no matter where you come from, no matter your neighborhood, you can come and participate in a high level because most of our, which we'll get to that in a minute, most of our volunteers are within, but they're all athletes, right? So each kid gets a high level of training, depending on what sport they're there for. But again, all free of charge, good equipment. We allow them to take some of the things home, like pickleball. Everybody got a racket and a ball, so that hopefully they use some of our facilities, our Parks and Rec facilities, and continue to play. But that is why we do so much fundraising and grants, so that again, all the kids can come for free.
As stated, all of our volunteers are Wilson Police Department sworn and civilian staff. Truist Banking and other local businesses have assisted with volunteering in the past. We have some youth that actually come as participants at a younger age, and then as they get older and kind of age out, they end up coming back as volunteers. Some of that has even wanted some of the youth that have come, been participants, become volunteers, actually want to have shown some interest in law enforcement careers. So it has led to some of that also.
We probably should have led with this, but the biggest thing for us with POW and just with the agency period is to get in front of the youth on the front end, right? They are our future. And so if we can show them that police are not all bad, we're human just like them, it gives us the opportunity to build that bond, that rapport, so that hopefully we deter those poor decisions, right? Most of the time during the school year, the school kind of catches their attention, hopefully. But in the summertime, we have nothing to do, we get bored. So we throw as many events we can out there, again, in hopes to keep them in a positive environment and stay away from the poor decisions that could be made.
So back in February, I believe, this was our mentoring group, and we went to Wilson Community College in Wilson, and the chef at the time, who recently passed away, hosted our culinary class. So all the kids were able to go in, see what a commercial kitchen looks like, make their own pizzas, taste the product, and take their own pizzas home. So that was one of the mentoring things that we did this year.
This is our PAL basketball camp. Even with our camp, we have 50+ kids come throughout either a 3-day to a week. It kind of depends on how the Christmas season falls and New Year's. But this is last year's football or basketball camp. I think this may be a cheer and football camp from last year. Each kid at the end of camp gets a shirt that is theirs to take home with them for participation. We also give out awards at the end of camp for sportsmanship and different things like that. But we all really enjoy what we do, being able to have that impact within our own community and with a lot of the kids that come to participate. This is our first ever pickleball. Like Miss Courtney said, the kids had a great time, but I think the adults had just as much fun. But first time we were kind of worried about it, but Wilson just built some great, state of the art pickleball courts. We've had a lot of tournaments come in, but Parks and Rec did allow us to form some kids up and host our first camp. Like I said, each kid went home with a racket, I guess would be what it's called, and a ball, in hopes that they continue to play and learn. This is our soccer camp. This young lady actually played soccer at Duke. So she came out, spoke to all the kids about kind of her path and getting there. She is now one of our counselors at one of the schools, kind of sports medicine type thing. But this camp alone, again, is at Gillette, and we had well over 100 kids come out through the week. Baseball. This is our baseball camp. So the baseball camp, we do a split week, baseball and softball. So this is the baseball camp that we hosted last year, which I think it ended up being our largest turnout for baseball camp in a while. Next would be our softball camp. Nice sized group of girls that came out last year, played. They really enjoyed it. Second half of the week with the girls, and we had a nice turnout for that one also. Typically, we get the Barton College will come out, their softball team, and assist us with instruction. Same for baseball. We used to have the Tobbs. I don't know if everybody or anyone's ever come and see the Tobbs. Now we're Warbirds, but the Tobbs would host our baseball. Basketball, again, we have several volunteers that are officers that used to play collegiate basketball. And so that's kind of how we run it. The guys and girls that have been athletes in college will then come back, and then other volunteers will, outside the PD, will come and assist us. This is our Christmas in the South. Yes, so like Major Sanders stated, this is our Christmas in the South, the biggest event in the year. Sworn in civilian volunteers and also other departments within the city come in and volunteer because it's such a big event. There are lines outside around the community center building way before we get there in the morning. Some people are lining up at 4 and 5 in the morning out there in the cold in December just to be able to have an opportunity to get in and to bring their kids so that they can come in and get gifts for Christmas. So it's just a really, really impactful thing to see because these kids come up and they see these 8-foot tables lined up across the gym floor, and they can come in and they can put their hand on exactly what they want. So to see their faces light up and they be able to have the gifts that they want for Christmas that they may not otherwise give, it's so fulfilling for us. And for us to be able to give back to the community that gives to us, it makes us feel like what we're doing is well worth it. This is football. Again, one of our largest camps all week. And as you stated last year, well over 200, almost hit 300 kids last year, which was our biggest one in my 16 years of being here. Just another picture. Those are two of our officers. Oh. Any questions in regards to our PAL program?
Thank y'all very much.
Thank you.
All right. I think we had another break on the calendar, but I think we should power through unless anybody thinks different. All right, we're gonna power through. So the next thing to talk about is our updated vision statement and values discussion. So if y'all will recall at our last task force meeting, we talked about what the vision statement should be, what we wanted it to be. We wanted it to be able to be easily remembered and not overly complicated or have 15 different clauses in them. As you know, some of us, when we start to write things, we want to include every single adjective, which is important, but also we thought that we could streamline it a little bit. And so we took some of that feedback here in the room, and then we met, Ciara and I met with staff, and we kind of wordsmithed some of what the feedback was, and came up with this updated vision statement here that you see on the screen. And so we, as it relates to our former statement, we moved the term more informed to our values portion, and I'll talk about that in a minute, and then incorporated community-based support in the values, which were two pieces of feedback that we heard. And so the updated vision statement here is a safer and healthier North Carolina, where youth and families have access to meaningful opportunities, violence is prevented, and interventions are available in every community. And we thought that pretty well captured, what our focus is here in this task force. And then all of the other things that we were talking about pretty robustly, I think moving those to our values, which all support the vision statement, right? So having individual values that can then incorporate all of the other pieces of feedback that we got from folks. And so this is where we landed, wanted to bring that back to all of you to make sure that this reflects the task force's desire there. And then I think that we can then move on and talk about values and kind of how everything else plugs into values from there. So thoughts about the updated vision statement. I think it feels pretty tight to me, easy to remember for those of us that need to be able to rattle it off, right? Everyone here? Okay. So any objections to using this as our vision statement and then, moving some of those other pieces into our values? Well, that was a pretty fast discussion. That's great. It was good that we were moving on. I will say before, we close out this part, I think a lot of our presentations today were so good. I took a lot of notes, but as we are working in our individual groups and coming up with our recommendations, I think a little bit of framing for everybody, right? I don't want us to think that every recommendation we make has to be earth shattering, right? It has to be this huge, we create a new program and we are going to implement this new program statewide. Some of our recommendations will be those things, right? But I think that other recommendations that are equally as important could be things like, supporting the request of DJJDP to expand the number of people working JCPCs, right? So that is a very discrete recommendation. It is a very impactful recommendation. And the why of it will obviously be covered in the reports that we put out. But I think let's not be limited by thinking that everything we have to do has to be earth shattering. We want to do some earth shattering stuff, but we also want to make sure that we are making catching all of the possible recommendations. And so I think there are a lot of possible recommendations that came out of our presentations today. So I'm excited to see where we're going. It sounds like y'all are doing a lot of good work, and I hope to be able to join more of the meetings in this coming cycle than I have been over the past month or so. So I'll be able to do that. So now I will stop talking and turn over to Ciara.
Oh, I think we're going to move into the values discussion too.
Oh, we were going to go ahead and do values?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I don't have a slide on that. All right. Just kidding. So, do we have prepared values, staff, folks? I didn't think we did.
No, I think it was just going to be an open discussion.
Okay.
Just like
they are reminding me that I have failed to do half of my job, which is talk about values. So to that point, I thought maybe we'd have that on a different agenda. So we didn't have pre-drafted values. And so then, we moved more informed. The things that we moved out of the vision statement were more informed. We moved out community-based support, because we obviously need community-based support. But, that doesn't necessarily have to be something that's our vision statement. It can be the values that support the vision statement. So I guess the discussion is what other things are important to have as values to support our vision. If folks have feedback about individual things that, or if people want to percolate on it, that's fine too. We can send thoughts and recommendations to me and to Ciara and to staff, and we can talk about that further if people kind of need a moment to absorb and think about that moving forward. What would y'all prefer? A moment to, I'm seeing nods for a moment to absorb. Okay. So then I guess as homework, so to speak, let's think about what values support the vision and what we want those values to look like. I think that when we think about mission, vision, values, the mission is given to us by the governor, obviously, in the EO, and the vision statement we now have. And so what are our values that support that mission and vision that we have as a task force? All right.
Okay.
Now I will.
Thank you. Well, we've done really great on time today, so we're close to wrapping up. So before we do, I just want to give a moment if anybody has any kind of final thoughts from the presentations or something we didn't touch on, but now that we have space and opportunity, you'd like to raise it to the group. Okay. Well, hearing none, we'll move forward to wrapping up. So one thing we wanted to do is remind you all of our upcoming meetings, but also to talk a little bit about schedule changes we've already talked about and potential schedule changes that will need to happen. So our next meeting is July 28th here in Raleigh again. But if you remember at our last meeting, we talked about our September meeting being moved up a couple of weeks in order to coincide with the Gang Investigators Association state conference. And so that meeting is now going to be on September 1st, and we're going to be meeting in Winston-Salem at that conference. And so the calendar invites should have been updated for you all, and we'll be sending out more information about the logistics for that in the weeks and months to come. But please make sure that you have that on your calendars as updated to September 1st. And then we also wanted to talk about our November meeting because as you all know from our discussion last meeting about our timeline, our work groups right now are digging into developing recommendations, and those are due to us in the fall around October, early November. And our November meeting is a really important one because that is when those recommendations will be presented to the entire task force. And so we'll hear what every work group has come up with, and then be able from there to move forward with prioritizing some recommendations for our report to the governor's office. And so it's really important that everybody is at that meeting. But currently that meeting is also scheduled the same week as Thanksgiving. So we wanted to check in about that to see how folks are feeling about your ability to make that meeting. And as an alternative option, we've identified November 12th from 12 to 3 p.m. as another date that we could do in lieu of the 24th. But we wanted to gauge you all as a task force and kind of see what scheduling looks like, and we'll go with what the majority of the group would prefer. So I guess the easiest way to do this, does anybody have conflicts or concerns about being able to make the meeting on the 24th?
And because it is important for us to have folks here in person, we just, I feel like if you're like my family, we know what we do for Thanksgiving. We do the same thing every year for Thanksgiving. So we already know if we're going to travel on Tuesday, if we're not going to travel on Tuesday. So we wanted to make sure that Sheriff may have come. Okay, Sheriff.
Okay. And I see her now. Okay.
Same.
So what about the 12th, November 12th? Do folks, if you could take a minute to look at your schedule and let us know if you think that you would be able to accommodate that date? All right. Head nods. Any conflicts? No? Okay, great. So hearing none, we're gonna go ahead and decide to move the meeting to November 12th. And that shouldn't change much about your deadlines for your work groups and getting the recommendations. But we'll update you accordingly if any of those have to shift a week or so, and we'll get updated calendar invites out so you have this updated date and time on your schedule. And that is really all that we have for y'all today. Like I said, we've done really great on time, so we'll be getting y'all out of here pretty early. And so feel free to take advantage of this time to continue to network with your other task force members that you may not see as often if they're in other work groups. And just thank you all for your time and for your engagement in this task force, for the work that you're doing in your work groups every month. Thank you to our work group chairs for leading those efforts and helping us move along on our recommendations. And also, I know that our staff and our staff leads have talked to you all about how we're using this time in these large group meetings to try to share information and bring presentations that feel relevant across the work group. So please continue to bring those recommendations to your chairs, who will pass it on to the staff for us to prioritize presentations during these meetings. All right, and if there's no other thoughts, questions, I will motion to close the meeting. Awesome. All right, thank you all.
So.